Authorised the publication of the reports of the high-level review panel on the state security report he appointed in June 2018, and this was to assess the integrity of the agency. The presidency said that the report was redacted for public consumption in view of the fact that the full report contained the names and identities of persons who could not be named at this point, as well as details of operational matters that could compromise the work of the SSA. Well, to help us unpack this report and the security agency itself, we're now joined via Skype by Mo Shaik, who's the former head of State Security Agency. Mr. Shaik, thanks very much indeed for joining us on the line. First question, I guess, this report and its findings, did they come as a surprise to you?
Not at all, not at all. In fact, it is a very sterling piece of work, and I would like to congratulate the panel who did such work. And essentially, it takes us back to the very beginnings of our democracy, where we constructed an intelligence paradigm and a architecture for intelligence in a democratic South Africa.
All right, so let's try and unpack what it says and perhaps track a little bit of history. The period starts around about 2009. Where do you think the cracks started to happen?
Well, the cracks, and I think we have to admit that the cracks were in the very beginnings, in the sense that in the amalgamation of the intelligence services in 1994, we brought in the statutory and non-statutory organizations, and that would include the ANC's Department of Intelligence. And of course, given the kind of transitional challenges we had at the time, it was expected that even people coming from different political backgrounds would be able to imbibe the spirit of the Constitution, the law, and slowly, in effect, lose their political affiliations and act in a non-political partisan manner, which is a requirement of the Constitution. And I know that because I was very integrally involved in writing that particular clause that the security services should be politically non-partisan. But the nature of South Africa's transition did not lead to the further non-partisan nature of the intelligence services, as the Commission so correctly found that it led to a very partisan intelligence services, and that, quite frankly, has got to stop.
So some of the things that have come out in this report, do you think that it was part of a state capture agenda?
I think the real problem, in my view, Peter, is that as long as political intelligence is a requirement of the government, we will always have this problem. So I think in the work, and I don't know who's going to take the work forward, and I'm hoping it would be the Commission, it's got to quite clearly state that the role of political intelligence no longer belongs to the mandate of the intelligence services. It is political intelligence that allows the intelligence services, and as the Commission has found, the executive, to ask the intelligence services to get involved in the gathering of political intelligence. And in the main, that leads to, as we've seen, leads to intelligence about political foes and political adversaries. So I'm hoping that in the new mandate of the intelligence services, that once and for all, after 25 years of a democracy, we are able to say there is no need for political intelligence gathering as a mandate of the intelligence services.
The former president made a comment in there. He said that he hopes that a can of worms isn't being opened with consequences. What do you make of that? What might that mean from where you're sitting?
I think that was a rather unfortunate and ill-judged comment by the former president. I think the issues, it matter not, in my view, it matters not who wrote the report. What matters is what is contained in the report. And let me just categorically say that I know many of the people who have served on that commission, and as someone who was investigating previous apartheid spies, none of those names on that commission ever appeared on my investigation list. This is not to say that there were no other investigation list, but I have worked very closely with many of those individuals, including in the underground, and if any of those individuals were involved in the intelligence services of the past, well, many of us would have long been dead by now.
So if this agency was overtaken for gathering evidence or intelligence, are we saying that there's probably players that are sitting on files of people that they might use, I don't know, to bribe, to force, to coerce certain types of behavior?
Well, I think that is an exaggerated claim. For me, the real issue is whether the intelligence services are equal to the task that confronts the country today. And there is where I'm hoping that a very public debate could take place about what kind of intelligence services we need now, and especially the kind of intelligence services in the 21st century as we deal with the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution. And to be quite honest, I think there's a lot of good men and women in the intelligence services, but the vast majority would need retraining, reskilled, to come out of the Cold War era, to put an end to the Cold War thinking, and to be able to ask the question, what can intelligence do to enhance the competitiveness of our country so that we can grow our economy, so that we could lead in the appropriate forum of the global world, especially at a time when the global world is in need of leadership. We don't need Cold War intelligence. We need futuristic intelligence, and we need intelligence that takes our country forward.
All right, so some recommendations have come through in this report, and one of them is to have two sections, one international, one domestic. Your thoughts on that, and perhaps what other important changes that you would like to see to make it more effective?
Well, number one, I think the splitting of the intelligence services into the foreign and domestic is not new. It was there in the past. We did have a national intelligence agency and we had a South African Secret Service. I never could understand the rationale for the SSA, the State Security Agent, leave alone that atrocious name, State Security, instead of intelligence. But names aside, I think the recommendation to split the intelligence services back to what they were is correct. It is legal. It is constitutional. And secondly, I think the recommendation of putting the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, and in fact, the role of the intelligence coordinator, give the powers back to the coordinator that was once there, and moving that entire structure into the presidency is a really very interesting concept. Of course, I'm on record to say, and again, I'm about to make a very career-limiting comment, we need to really discuss whether executive supervision of the intelligence services must translate into the appointment of a minister. I am conflicted on that issue, and I think we need to really evaluate whether a minister or full-blown ministry, or what precisely is the role of a ministry in the intelligence services, especially when you would gather that a minister of intelligence sits with his or her colleagues in cabinet and almost creates the situation of being first amongst equals.
All right, and finally, from what you've seen and heard, would you say that some very senior government officials probably should be facing criminal liability?
I think there's lots of explanations that needs to be given. I don't want to prejudge matters or preempt matters, and in fairness, The implicated individuals must be given their chance to tell their story and tell their story openly and honestly. And there may be good reasons for why they've acted the way they've acted. But that story must be told, and I think none of them can hide behind the need-to-know principle, especially since the person who needs to know is the president, is demanding that everyone tells him their involvement in matters. So let's give the process a chance. Let's listen to their stories, and let's do it in a way that enhances our democracy rather than promote further factionalism that has destroyed or has impeded the functions of the intelligence services.
All right, Mr. Shaik, thanks very much indeed for sharing your insights with us on this day. That was Mo Shaik, the former head of State Security Agency in South Africa.